So this is a session I had with Codex in this case and GitHub Copilot CLI, building this small app I've built called Clip Capture, which is for actually capturing these kind of videos, just screen recording essentially for the Mac and automatically clipping them up and editing and that kind of thing. And this session is a good example of a session where it went a bit back and forth. I had an issue where there was no audio being captured, and so the transcription was completely empty. And then I thought it was to do with OBS and the microphone being selected not being the correct microphone. In this case, Codex actually went down a different route and thought it was something to do with the levels. So I tried to pull it back to at least check first, is it the wrong microphone? So it's that kind of thing that you often get into with LLMs. But something I've found really useful recently with this kind of thing is to now run a skill that says, well, let's reflect on this session and just see if there's anything we can do next time that would stop that back and forth and get us there a bit quicker. And the actual skill that I'm using here is this. It's fairly simple. It really just says, look at the conversation, see where the user corrected the AI. That's me telling the AI, actually do this. Look at where the AI went into a loop and a spin and started cycling around doing things multiple times, trying to do the same thing over and over, did the wrong thing because it lacked context, for example. And also look where I, the user, explicitly said to it, please do this, I prefer we do this, can we always make sure, etc., etc. So what is it? Reflect session improvements. Okay, so it's deliberately looked at the conversation only to start with. So late root cause convergence, we spent significant effort on clip capture audio processing before discovering the decisive issue was OBS mic routing. That's exactly what I was saying. It went off into a kind of, oh, the levels are wrong, I need to adjust how I'm capturing the audio levels. And what it actually was is that the OBS source and the source that I was selecting in the software were completely out of sync. So this microphone was off and not really connected. I think it was connected but off. So the audio was missing, and then it was trying to transcribe missing audio, and it got into a loop trying to fix that problem, not realizing it was the mic that was the problem. So I'm interested in what that means. So what do you mean by end-to-end source path validation? So this is interesting, an example of where sometimes these skills need refining. So it's the first time I've run this using Codex and Copilot, because I'm usually using Claude. And what I would say is this has gone into the specific problem that occurred, which is fine. But I think this is also useful for the kind of meta layer of how are we doing things, how's AI doing things that it can do better, but not necessarily specifically in this case. So I'm going to say, what's the more general problem issue that we could mitigate for here, regardless of the specific project we're working in. See what that does. There you go. So now we're getting into it. The general issue is debugging the wrong layer first in a multi-system workflow. So when several components touch the same signal, app, OS, external tool, backend, we often assume where truth comes from instead of proving it first. Okay, and this is something you'll have seen. It leads to deep local fixes while the root cause sits somewhere completely else. As developers, we've done this. We've spent ages trying to fix a problem in one part of the system, only to realize that the problem was in another part of the system. Or we were literally looking at the wrong environment or something. We've all been there. So that's interesting. So the potential mitigation would be to map the flow, I think that's trying to say, and identify the source of truth at each step. That's essentially right. I would call that check the evidence. Generalized. Before diagnosing, fixing, verify the actual signal path and source of truth with direct evidence. Right, correct. Okay, so you can see that was a back and forth. I think this is something we often do wrong with AI, is we hope that the skill is going to magically solve everything, but we don't push back. And in this case, the skill went wrong because it went too specific. And what I actually want it to do is to find the more general principle that we can apply for all sessions in the future. So do you want me to apply this as a persistent session fix preference, e.g. add concise check the evidence rule to your guidance docs? yes, what would that look like? Check the evidence first. In multi-system bugs, verify the end-to-end signal data path and source of truth before making fixes. Map producer, transforms consumer, and confirm each hop with direct evidence. It's interesting how it's adopting this producer, transforms, consumer language. I'm not sure that's what I would use. What do we mean by producer, transforms, and consumer in this? Well, let's just say that. What do we mean by producer, transforms, and consumer? Where the signal data originates, every step that modifies, filters, slices, routes, the component that finally uses it. Okay, I mean that still feels quite specific, but I can live with it. I think we can go with that. So, okay, yes, please update the docs. And remember, this is all about iterative improvements. So what we're trying to do here is get past the in the weeds, using the LLM, being frustrated, things not quite working, and thinking, oh, that's just AI, and just come up one level that says, why did this go wrong? What can we try doing to steer this in a better direction next time? Now, this may not be sufficient, but it could be a necessary first step. And then we look at this again next time and we do the same exercise. We tweak the skill because the skill got too specific, and we say, oh, we're looking for that level up. You know, these are the kind of little iterations that we're doing all the time. So I'm just going to have a quick look at this. Check the evidence first. This is the docs that it's found. I'm not sure if contributing.md is the right file, but I mean, it will do for this. Debugging principle, check the evidence first. Okay. Continue. Any other issues the review flagged up? Two others. Unclear system ownership boundaries. We initially blurred what clip capture controls versus what ABS controls. So these are systems, one which is the one we're working on and one which is a third-party external system that we're interacting with. Explicitly declare ownership in docs and features. Yes. You see, that's quite a good one actually in this case, because that means we have to be specific when we're working on this about what we are doing in this system and what belongs somewhere else, which avoids kind of feature creep and scope creep and complexity that we don't need to rebuild because it's handled by, in this case, OBS. And the second one is we delivered results but hadn't... this is a separate process issue where we had done the work, but then my GitHub issue hadn't been updated to say that this work had been done, which just confuses things. So I think we should, yes, what would system ownership clarity look like? I want to just get that back before, I know it could just do that directly in the document, but I want it to be clear what it's talking about before I say yes, go ahead. So for any feature bug that spans tool services, state ownership before implementing. So yes, okay, I think that's quite good. Just to be clear about boundaries really, isn't it? And in the event of a bug, identify which subsystem has the failing behavior, which I think will tie in with our check the evidence quite nicely, and verify that basically and only fix it in there. Okay, so that's great. Yes, that sounds right to me. I'm not sure contributing.md is the right place for this, but it's fine. As long as we're capturing it, we can always fix that later. So that looks okay. And hopefully now it's going to do the one last one. And the last one about completing. It seems to want me to keep nudging it today for some reason. We could run this session again now. That's the thing. We could run reflect again on the reflection, but I think that might get too meta. There you go. When request is complete, close it. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that just makes sense, right? That if you've got stuff in GitHub and you want to keep track of it there, that you would make sure this happens at the end. So we're saying putting all of this in a document is increasingly being proven to not always be the right way to do this. So for example, if you just stuff your claude.md with instructions, it's not brilliant. A better thing here in general is to have that progressively load, whether that's just separate files, sub-documents, if you like, that Claude MD or agents.md references, or skills that load in when you need them. what you're trying to do is avoid loading loads of information into context at the wrong time. Saying that, this feels quite high level to me, like how we approach fixing bugs, architecting the system, working on issues. It is quite high level, but we could break this down into separate skills over time. And again, that's something that we would iterate as we move along and work in this system. But there you go. So the next thing I would do in this case is let those sit there now, try a new feature, see if we get into a spin again. If we do, run the reflect again, and just keep iterating it that way. But hopefully with this, we'd see some improvement in the generated code and cut down the amount of spinning around in circles that we end up doing with AI.